for nominating himself or hopping on.
Councilmember Shipman, I don't even hear anything coming in the room.
I'm here.
Okay, are you hearing the room okay?
Yes.
She's here.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and kick this off. This is going to be a city council meeting for Lake Stevens City Council. We are downtown, beautiful Lake Stevens at the Mill. We're currently recording this, and this meeting will be published on our YouTube channel later. It's November 26th, 2024, and I would ask all to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. And
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
all right, great. Clerk Chellan, can we get a roll call?
Absolutely. Councilmember Daughtry,
Present.
Councilmember Peters Hagen,
Present.
Councilmember Donahue,
Present.
Councilmember Shipman online,
Present.
Councilmember Jorstad. Present. Councilmember Ewing
Present.
and Councilmember Tackett.
Present.
All right, great. And Council President, approval agenda, please.
Yes, before you have an agenda for tonight's meeting, I would like to make one small change under a city department report. We have a little report from Public Works Director Halverson regarding the storm that took place this last week. And so is there any other changes or amendments anyone would like to make?
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second. All those in favor of the amended agenda? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Councilmember Shipman,
Aye.
you have an agenda.
Excellent. Thank you, President. All right, let's kick it off some guests of business. We've got some great folks in the audience tonight. It's Community Transit and just the partnership that we're working out with them with the Zip Shuttle. So I will hand over some time to Community Transit. Yeah. That should be working.
Testing. This is easier to hold than to work with this thing, so I'll just, I'll do this. Rick Elgin Fritz, CEO at Community Transit. Great to be here joining you today. I'm joined by a number of great folks from our team at Community Transit who've been working busily on our expansion of our on-demand transit service, which is what we're here to celebrate tonight. We've had a wonderful partnership with the community group here, helping us plan and shape this new service. And we got a couple folks here from the chamber and the city, in addition to some social service providers outside that weren't able to get here today. But I really want to thank the members of the community who helped work with the team here to shape an approach that will work for, hopefully, for Lake Stevens. It's been a big year for community transit. It's been a wild few years for the transit industry in general. We've been buffeted by some pretty extreme external changes, you know, one of which was the pandemic, which has really changed the way people use transit now with the Monday through Friday commute kind of a thing of the past. And the coming of light rail to the Linwood City Center station. You know, those external changes have given us kind of a permission structure to think differently about how we serve the community, to think more creatively, to see if there's some innovations we can undertake to provide a higher quality of transit service in the county, and to see if we can find better ways to meet people's mobility needs. If you ask somebody off the street who doesn't ride the bus or the train, why don't you ride the bus? They'll tell you, it's either not convenient because it doesn't work for my routine, or I don't feel safe. And I don't want to try to take that on, right? So the new service we're talking about today goes right at both those concerns. It's an on-demand service, very much like Uber or Lyft, a vehicle that you can summon with an app on your phone or a phone call to our call center, and take a trip anywhere within the zone here around Lake Stevens for any purpose for the price of a bus ride, which is $250 for most folks, or half that for low income. My goal as the leader of community transit is to get more people to use transit, to use this service as a first mile, last mile solution that people can use to get to the transit center, to take the bus to the train or to Everett Station or what have you. But if folks need to use that service to get around Lake Stevens because the lake is a barrier, because the road network is a barrier, because it's inconvenient, or there are parts of the city that aren't easy to access for folks, this has the opportunity to solve those issues as well. So it's an experiment. We're new at this. We've been doing it for about 2 years in Linwood, and it's been working great. Linwood's a big city with a defined downtown and now a light rail station. So there's a lot of reasons people want to use the system in Linwood. Now we're going to try it here in Lake Stevens, which is a slightly different land use pattern, slightly less urban. We're going to be trying it up in Arlington, which is about half the size of Lake Stevens. And we're going to try it up in Darrington. We're going to try a rural pilot to see how we can make it work in all these different settings around the county and see what we can learn, and then draw some conclusions and continue to try to grow that service across the county as we dial it in. So I'll stop there. I'm going to turn it over to Kevin Futhy, who's our leader on this particular project, and he's going to walk through for you how the service is going to work and answer any questions you may have about it. So again, I want to thank you for having us in tonight, and Kevin, take it away.
Thanks, Rick. Yeah, thanks very much. Happy to give the council this overview of our project, and yeah, go ahead to the next slide, please. So what we'll do is just walk you through a little bit of the background of the last year plus that we've been out here working with the community working group members, designing this service, describe how the customers will use the service, so you all can become acquainted with kind of the end-to-end customer experience, and then talk about what's left here over the coming weeks to bring this service to fruition for you. Next slide. Next slide. Thanks. So yeah, we've had over a year's worth of engagement now in Lake Stevens, talking to the community working group that we've assembled. Like Rick said, it included members of the business community, nonprofit community, and local disability advocates, because we wanted to make sure that this would work for everybody in the community. So we met 5 times with this group. They helped us implement 2 community-wide surveys that we had hundreds of responses to from across the city. We asked people first about what their transportation needs were that were not being met by the current transportation infrastructure here. And then we designed some possible solutions that could help overcome those barriers. We asked which of those that they would be most likely to use. And we learned that 63% of our respondents said that they would be likely to ride a microtransit system like currently exists in Alderwood. So that was the one that we felt confident would be the most likely to succeed in a pilot here. So we'll be bringing, like you saw the vehicle outside tonight, zip style microtransit like exists in Alderwood, now up here to Lake Stevens. Next slide. So as part of the pilot, we're going to be soliciting constant feedback from our customers over the 12 to 18 months of this experiment, as Rick called it. So, from day one, we'll be out here watching and listening to the customers to hear what they have to say about the service. Is it working for you? What are the challenges that you have to accessing it? What are improvements that you would like to see? And because it's a pilot, we will retain the flexibility to make those changes in real time as we get that feedback. So we're not just going to set it and forget it out here. We're going to be out here side by side with our customers and with you all to tailor that service over that 12 to 18 month pilot project, and hopefully continue to improve it during that period of time so we can make it a success. Yep. So just a little bit about what it is and how it works. It is on-demand microtransit, which means that you can summon it when you're ready to travel, just like you would a taxi or an Uber or a Lyft. You don't need to pre-schedule a day ahead or earlier in the day. It's just in the moment when you're ready to go. You book the trip or through a smartphone app or through a phone call. You travel from anywhere to anywhere you want within the service boundaries. And we'll share that map in just a moment. The pricing is the same as our local bus fares. So that's $2.50 for adults. For those who are eligible because of low income, and for seniors, it's $1.25. And youth 18 and younger ride for free. You can pay for this service with an Orca card by tapping that when you get into the vehicle, by putting cash into the fare box in the vehicle. You can use bus tickets that are distributed to social service agencies that provide free trips for folks. And you can also pay with a debit or credit card when you book the trip. We have wheelchair accessible vehicles like the one we have brought to town this evening. And we also have car seats and bike racks available for people who are traveling with bikes or for families with small children that need to be strapped into a car seat. We have options for them as well. Next slide. So here's a map of the service area that we'll have for you. You can see that it covers the entirety of the city boundaries of Lake Stevens, plus a couple of other little spots that we decided to incorporate into the service area. So I'll just call those out to mention those. So up on the north end, you'll see that we have the Walmart as sort of a satellite location for the zone. So people can travel to and from that Walmart. We heard from the community working group that that's a very common place for people who live in town to go shopping. So we wanted to make sure we could provide access up Highway 9 to the Walmart. We also included the Lake Stevens Community Park on the east side of town. We think that'll be a place that people would like to travel to. And then the new clinic relatively new clinic off Soper Hill Road, not technically in Lake Stevens, but we wanted to include that in the zone as well because that'll be, we're pretty sure, a common destination for medical appointments for folks in the community. Otherwise, the entirety of the city is within the service boundary. It will operate 7 days a week, 5 a.m. to 10 p.m., 365 days a year. Same span of service every day of the year. So we don't shut it down for holidays. We don't change the hours for holidays. It'll be available for the public, every day, including all federal holidays. And what this does is, like Rick was saying, it can take you to and from any of your favorite shopping destinations, your medical appointments. It can take you to the parks. It can take you to all the schools in the city. And it can connect you to the transit center and to the local buses. So if you were, someone who is having trouble accessing our fixed route network prior, this might be something that can help you overcome that barrier and get you to riding a bus to go out, head down to Everett or head down to Linwood to catch light rail. And next slide. So we'll have two different kinds of vehicles in service for you out here. We've got our 6-passenger minivan, which is a Toyota Sienna hybrid. These are the vehicles that will have the rear-mounted bike racks on them, so folks can travel with bikes, as well as the car seats for families with small children. Then we have our wheelchair accessible minivans. These are Chrysler Pacificas that have been retrofitted. They can fit one wheelchair in them securely, and then in addition to that, have 3 passenger seats. So in all of our rides, we want to encourage as much as possible shared trips between community members. Just like on buses, you will be riding with other folks from your community when you ride ZIP. And that's one, to keep wait times down overall and efficiency up. But it also helps us keep our costs down and do more with fewer vehicles. Yeah, next slide. Talk a little bit about how to ride, and I've referred to some of this. There's 2 ways to book your trip. Like I said, you can download our app and book a trip that way, or you can call into our toll-free phone number, talk to an agent, and book over the phone. You request the ride by providing your origin address and your destination address. If you're using the app, you can also just drop a pin on the map if you don't have a specific address. You can kind of do it just like you would in using Google Maps. And then you can, like I said, pay on board with your Orca card or with cash or through your debit or credit card over the phone or in the app. Next slide. Here's some examples of what the screen flow looks like in the app. And we found in Alderwood currently, most of our users are app users versus phone. We'll see how that lands out here. We don't have a preference necessarily how customers decide to book. They both should work just as well. But for folks who use the app, you open it up. The first time you log in, you verify your phone number. It'll send you a push notification to do authentication for that. And then you're ready to go. The registration process is under a minute. You provide your origin address, and if you have GPS turned on, it'll use your geolocation to see where you are, and it'll confirm that you want to get picked up at that location, or if you want to get picked up somewhere different, like around the corner or somewhere else, you can reset that origin manually. And then you say where you're going, you put in the address, or again, you can drag and drop a pin on the map. You confirm that, and then it'll propose a trip for you. So it'll do a quick scan of the fleet and all of the current trips that are in progress. And it'll say, okay, so the zip will be to you in 10 minutes. And then it will take 8 minutes to drive to your destination, and it'll drop you off at this specific time. And if that sounds good to you, you click book the trip. In this screen, you're also able to change the number of passengers. So if you're traveling with other people, you can input that data there, and then it will calculate the fare that you would need to pay. And then once you do that, you'll see in real time the vehicle icon on the screen heading toward you once it's on its way to pick you up. That'll help you know when it's time to go outside to the curb and meet the vehicle. Booking by phone is basically the same thing, except an agent is walking through those steps on your behalf. So you just describe to them everything I just mentioned. They input that into the system for you. They let you know verbally what time it's going to come pick you up. And then you just head out to the curb at that time and wait for your driver. And so bringing this to Lake Stevens over the next few weeks, here's what we've got going on. So we've got plans to come back here on December 14th for Winterfest and promote the service and get people hooked up with Orca cards. We know that there's probably a lot of customers or soon to be CT customers out here that are going to ride Zip that don't have an Orca card yet. We want to make sure that they have that. So we'll have a promotion for folks where they can sign up and get 1 month of free rides on our services with a promotional Zip Orca card. You can actually sign up for that right now on our website. If you go to this web address on the screen, you just put in your name and your address, and we'll mail that out to you. And that will be good for 30 days of free trips on Zip or any CT services. You can also use it to transfer to other Orca agency services as well, like Metro or Sound Transit. And as I said, we'll be back here December 14th. We'll be bringing some of those Orca cards with us to that event. So if you miss this sign up period, we'll bring some here to that event and be able to give it to you directly there at Winterfest. So we hope to see you there. And then we're working through our community working group contacts to distribute flyers and to let the community know. Specifically, we want to be reaching out to seniors, low-income folks, people with disabilities, the people that we believe will most benefit from this kind of a new low-cost transportation, on-demand transportation service here in Lake Stevens. And next slide. You'll see the vehicles beginning early December out here as we begin our testing. So we'll be making sure that the app is ready to go, the call center's set up and routing properly, the vehicles and the drivers are familiar with the area, and doing some final testing the first 2 weeks of December, and our targeted launch date then for service and when it will be available for customers to ride will be Tuesday, December 17th. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Any comments? Any accolades?
I was just going to make one comment that you stated you got a couple of destinations outside our service area and so forth. And I would ask you to consider, we have a very large church being built just border of our city limits on 99 and State Route 92. And I I mean, it's a large church.
Okay,
I would
thank you.
suggest that maybe you add that to your destinations.
We'll look at that. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
You kind of mentioned it in the context of Orca cards, but I was just curious how transfers work with this. Either, return trips or switching to a main route.
Yeah, and the Orca card is the only way right now to facilitate a transfer at no cost. So if you board Zip, you then have 2-hour window after you tap your Orca card to transfer to any other service or to take a return trip on the Zip shuttle at no additional cost. So you can go from Zip to a bus or to the train, and if you're in Linwood, or back onto Zip within a 2-hour window, that's considered a free transfer.
Okay. In the future, will there be an option to transfer through the app?
No, you're going to need an Orca card.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so definitely encourage folks to take advantage of our promotion or come to Winterfest and pick up an Orca card in person. But again, if you go to our website, you can go to that link and we'll mail one to your home as well. Yeah.
I didn't catch it. Maybe how many cars were you going to have in the area?
So we're going to have 5 revenue vehicles and then 1 spare at launch. And we may not put all 5 in service on day 1, but we'll be able to flex up to that level as the demand starts to increase, and then go from there. See how that responds.
So how responsive can you be to demands? I know, there's a 10 p.m. you may have different demand time than 5 a.m. and so time in between. So what do you guys have in place to provide that flexibility?
So the drivers are scheduled 2 weeks out, and then every 2 weeks they kind of look at the past 2 weeks of performance and of travel demand, and they'll rebalance the schedule towards those high demand times, and so that wait times can be kept down as much as possible during those hours. And then you may need fewer vehicles in service in those early morning and late night hours.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for all the work you've done at working with the city. I think it's a really incredible tool that we have available for our citizens, especially the ones that are underserved and underrepresented, and that have special needs, and those aren't being currently being. It's a big blessing for our community to have that option. So thank you.
Yeah, this is really exciting. I think our community struggles with having access to public transportation and being in close proximity to bus stops. And I could just see this really opening that up for a large segment of the population. What's the age limit?
Low end is so from 13 to 17, you need parental permission to install the app and to create an account and to book trips. If you're a parent and you want to book a trip for your child down to age 10, you can do that. Below age 10, we need you to ride with the children. So unaccompanied minors below age 10 are not permitted on Zip. But yeah, 13 to 17, if your folks are okay with it, you can download the app and use it.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One last question, Kevin. So
Sure.
what would success look like for this program? Like how would we know that this program is being successful from your standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's 2 things we look at. One of them are some of the service metrics, the how many rides are we getting per hour out here? And the other one is the customer feedback that we get about the service. Is it working for them? Is it showing up in a timely fashion? And does it help them, does it help them get where they need to be when they want to go? So I think it's a balancing of the quantitative side of things and of the service metrics, and as well as the customer feedback that we hear from our customers. Yeah.
Sorry, one final question that just came to me as you were talking about the younger riders. So if a parent, for example, books a trip, will they still be able to continue to track that trip after the rider has entered the vehicle, just to know that, their child was made to the destination, for example?
So there's a function in the app. So if you're saying if the parent has the phone and keeps it at home, well, what they would get is a notification when the ride is ended. But I don't believe that there's any real-time vehicle tracking going on once you're picked up. I can verify that for you. But the other thing you can do is like if it's a child booking on their phone, a teenager, for example, there is a feature in the app that you can use to send a notification to another person saying, I'm about to get in zip with this license plate and this driver's name at this time. So, if you want to share all of that with your parent or someone else, you can text that all of them and it's automated. So you just click a button, put in the person you want to text it to, and it goes right to them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I guess I gotta say something because I'm on, because I'm on the board. So I'm on the CT board. So we've been working on this for a year and 4 months or so. And we were really looking at the Linwood thing and wow, that really went well. And then when we picked Lake Stevens, I was pretty excited about it. So I'm really excited about this happening. And I really appreciate everybody that works on this at CT. I'm still waiting for the water shuttle. So, I know we're working on it. So, that's great.
Next summer.
Yeah.
The vehicle will turn into.
I don't care how it happens. It's going to get some of the time taken off,
Hey, well, I just want to thank Community Transit for being here and adding this great asset to our community. It's going to be a lot of fun to see how it works. It's going to be fun to see how the demographics works out. It'll be interesting to see who rides. Unfortunately, you took out a man to get my 4-year-old to preschool on his own. I thought I was just good there, but can you make sure that you maybe do a presentation for our senior center?
Absolutely. Yeah, that came up today at our community work group meeting.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think they'd be a great customer for you on this. Anything else?
Mayor Gailey, Councilmember Shipman has her hand up.
Okay,
Councilmember Shipman?
Kim.
Yeah, I just had a question regarding the transfers. So theoretically, say you're going to take the Linwood train to a concert or something in Seattle. So the Zip could come pick you up at your house, take you to the bus route that will get you to Linwood, that will get you to Seattle. Correct?
That's exactly right. Yep.
Nice. Thank you.
Sure thing.
That'll be very nice.
Yep.
Great. Anything else?
Yes, you do need that Orca card to make those transfers. Yeah.
Can you use the Orca? Because I think I have an Orca card on my Google Wallet, right? Is that the same thing?
Yeah, they have an integration now with Google Wallet. So if you have an Android device, a
That's
phone or a
impressive.
watch or something, yeah, you're able to. Yeah.
Teacher's pet.
Sorry.
Yeah, high tech. I think Google Wallet's been out, what, 10 years? Come on. All right. Do we have any, what was that?
So the app is not yet available for download. Once that's in the App Store and in the Google Play Store, it should be maybe 3 or 4 days prior to launch. We'll send out a notification to everyone who's signed up for that Orca promotion that, hey, you can go online and download it now. So get on that early interest list if you and that Orca promotion if you want the information as soon as we have it. But for sure, it'll be available for download on day one of service. But it also for anyone who's anxious to get it early, we'll let you know if you're on that Orca promotion list.
Great.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Thanks.
Hey,
for
Rick,
coming.
go ahead. What was that?
Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Hey, Rick, thank your team. Thanks for, I know there's a lot of behind the scenes work, hours put into making sure this logistically works out. So I appreciate your team and look forward to the continued partnership. Cool.
Thank you.
And you're more than welcome to stick around for whatever we're talking about next, but I know you probably have families to get home to, so.
Maybe some dinner.
Yeah, or dinner, yeah.
Dinner. Oh, geez.
All right, let's go to, all right, this is a good one. Let's introduce some returning officer and a returning community services officer. And Commander Thomas. I gotta do that, okay?
So maybe not.
Are we doing that?
Sound a little more excited.
Oh, I get to do that.
All right. Wayne, want to pop up here? I get the pleasure, I'm Commander Thomas, by the way, with the police department. I get the pleasure of reintroducing a couple of our folks. Officer Ackerman is returning to Lake Stevens Police Department from having been retired from law enforcement for 3 years. Officer Ackerman has been employed by the city of Lake Stevens from late 1999, starting as a reserve officer and transitioning to a full-time commissioned police officer in late 2001 until he retired in October of 2021, almost 22 years, when he honorably retired from the police department. Officer Ackerman and his wife attended and graduated Lake Stevens High School in 1987. After graduating, Officer Ackerman enlisted in the United States Marine Corps, where he served his country for over 4 years. During his service in the Marine Corps, he was deployed often in 6-month Mediterranean floats and served in Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm. In early 1989, Officer Ackerman and his high school sweetheart, Rochelle, were married. They have one daughter, Yvonne, who is now married to her high school sweetheart, EJ. Yvonne and EJ have 2 children, Joey, who is 15, and Jason, who is 10, making Officer Ackerman and his wife grandparents. During Officer Ackerman's career with the city of Lake Stevens, he worked patrol and became a Marine officer, at times having to work calls for service and details that occurred on the waters of Lake Stevens. Officer Ackerman was a field training officer and held instructor certification as a TASER instructor and instructing other officers in operating patrol vehicles in emergency vehicle operations. Officer Ackerman focused on public safety in the area of traffic enforcement, collision investigation, and impaired drivers. Officer Ackerman at times utilized a marked police motorcycle. Some of you guys remember being a Lake Stevens first motorcycle officer and only motorcycle officer. Officer Ackerman worked closely with the Target Zero Task Force, where he provided extra patrol looking for and arrested impaired drivers. Officer Ackerman completed additional training for collision investigations and became a collision reconstructionist. Not an easy get. Officer Ackerman had been awarded a Medal of Valor due to his actions taken during a Lake Stevens police incident where he responded to an armed suicidal subject. When Officer Ackerman retired, he and his wife, Rochelle, obtained their own interstate commercial transport authority and shipped commercial goods on an open flatbed in primarily the northwestern states of Washington, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, and Oregon. Officer Ackerman now is truly excited to return to Lake Stevens Police Department and work with many new officers who have been hired since he retired in 2021. He's looking forward to returning to the city where he graduated high school, and he has worked for almost 22 years as law enforcement officers to now again work with the citizens and community and actively focus on public safety. Officer.
I'm gonna swear in first.
We're all excited.
I got all excited.
All right, ready, Wayne, let's raise the right hand. I, Wayne Ackerman. I, Wayne Ackerman. Do solemnly swear and affirm. Do solemnly swear and affirm. That I will support and defend. That I will support and defend. Constitution and laws. The Constitution and laws of the United States. Of the United States. And the state of Washington. State of Washington. The ordinances of the city of Lake Stevens. The ordinances of the city of Lake Stevens. And the mission and regulations. And the mission and regulations of the Lake Stevens Police Department. Lake Stevens Police Department. And I will faithfully. And impartially perform. And discharge the duties. Of Lake Stevens Police Officer. Lake Stevens Police Officer. According to law and to the best of my ability. According to law and the best of my ability.
I'll be back.
We'll be back.
Nice to meet you and welcome.
Margaret? Oh! Now I get to reintroduce Margaret here. When did you leave? June. Okay. She left in June. She's back. Margaret previously worked in the records unit with Lake Stevens Police for almost 3 years prior to transitioning to the community service officer role in November of 2022. In June of 2024, she accepted a supervisor role in the Everett Housing Authority. After a few short months, she realized she missed helping the community members and animals of Lake Stevens. Her job duties will include parking enforcement and animal control, along with community engagement and education. She is excited to rejoin the Lake Stevens Police Department and looks forward to continuing to make an impact on the community. Mark Cooper.
And we're glad to have you. Perfect. I, Margaret Cooper,
I, Margaret Cooper,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the constitutional laws
the Constitution and laws
of the United States
of the United States
and the state of Washington,
and the state of Washington,
the ordinances
the ordinances
of the city of Lake Stevens,
of the city of Lake Stevens,
and the mission and regulations
and the mission and regulations
of Lake Stevens Police Department,
of Lake Stevens Police Department,
and that I will faithfully
and that I will faithfully
and impartially perform
and impartially perform
the duties
the duties
of the Lake Stevens Police Community Service Officer
of Lake Stevens Police Community Service Officer
according to the law
according to the law
and the best of my ability.
and that's my
There
ability.
you go.
Thank you. Congratulations. Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Thanks.
I know.
All right, and now we have Sarah.
Yeah, you saved the last employee introduction, saving the last for the best for last. Isn't that what we
Yeah,
say? There we
exactly.
go. So today I am introducing Nate Gruber, who joined the Lake Stevens Parks teams about 2 months ago as a parks maintenance worker. He's lived in Washington for the better part of 15 years. Prior to Lake Stevens, he worked for the city of Sammamish Parks Department, as well as their traffic engineering department. Nate graduated from the Grand Canyon University in Arizona with a bachelor's degree in psychology. In his personal time, he enjoys anything outdoors and spends a good bit of time outside, often backpacking and camping in the Pacific Northwest. He also enjoys videography and has made several videos of his travels and trips to share the places he has explored. He also utilizes his psychology degree by making videos that equipped others with knowledge and tricks to develop healthy habits. He's excited to have joined us here at Lake Stevens, and we're happy to have him.
Great.
Welcome.
Welcome. Good having you, Anthony. Yeah. All right. Good to see new folks, old faces, new folks. All right, let's move ahead with citizens' comments. We're going to open the floor for citizens' comments at this time, and we will first ask for anyone online who wishes to address the council for 3 minutes. Is there anyone online?
I do not see anybody yet. Anybody online who'd like to speak to the council, raise your digital hand. No.
Okay, great. And in person today, we have, let's go with Commissioner Wright first. Andrea Wright.
Hi, my name is Andrea Wright. I live at 10815 29th Street Northeast in Lake Stevens. Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, and city staff. Before I address my comments regarding the utility tax, I want to say how fabulous downtown looks. And I'm so grateful for the effort you have put into making a welcoming gathering place for the community. As Mayor Gailey said, I'm a Lake Stevens Sewer District Commissioner, and I'm coming to the council with comments regarding the potential sewer utility tax. As a commissioner, I respect the council's authority to impose this new tax, but I have a few comments I hope you take into consideration tonight. How you define what will be taxed is important. Consider whether this is a tax on gross revenue versus sewer rate revenue. If the tax is on all gross revenue as currently defined residential, commercial, development, and new connection fees will be affected. As a public utility, you know we are not a revenue-based utility, and so all revenue comes from the same customers the city already taxes in other ways. We know that our customers are struggling with inflation prices. Please be considerate to the citizens in the community and give them time to adjust their personal finances to accommodate this tax and have time to realize their bill will increase and they need to change bill pay before being penalized with penalties and interest. The district recommends at least a 90-day period or 3 full billing cycles to notify customers of the change. We welcome the city to provide messaging through these billing cycles. Thank you.
Thank you. And Nathan Packer.
Good evening. Live on 117th Drive Southeast. I emailed this to you so that it would be documented, but wanted to share some thoughts here today. So I have some concerns with the ordinance. Primarily want to point out a few things. One, the county in the last few weeks just had a proposed budget amendment to introduce the county property tax by 8%. If you were involved in that at all, it was vehemently opposed by the citizens. There were over 1,000 emails submitted to the county council. They had hundreds of people come. It took hours and hours and hours for individuals to come and say, don't tax us anymore, don't tax us anymore, don't tax us anymore. That was an 8% increase to the property tax. For what it's worth, right? A 6%, if I'm doing the math correctly, on my sewer tax will cost me $70 a year. Now, that may not be a lot to me, but it is a lot for somebody who is on a fixed income or low income or is going to the food bank on a regular basis to get food, et cetera. Two, I struggle with a statement in the staff report that looks at a tax on citizens as, quote, an untapped revenue stream. I would hope that our city government isn't going around figuring out ways it can extract revenue from its constituents. If additional funds are needed to support a growing city and increase costs, et cetera, then so be it. But I propose that we should first determine that we have a need and then only raise taxes to support and reflect that need. In this instance, it appears that the city is saying, hey, there's a revenue source here. I wonder what we could do with that money. I think that's a dangerous mindset. Three, I appreciate that you want to look at other cities to understand how others are approaching the situation, which have this tax, which don't. But I don't think we should be doing something just because another city does it. If we can find a way as a city to get things done without any additional taxes, I think that's great. We should be celebrating that rather than saying again, hey, there's another way for us to go get some funds. Lastly, I just want to summarize some comments directly from Council Member Nate Naring, County Council. He gave 3 reasons in a recent email for voting no on any county tax increases. And I share these things with my own comments included. I strongly believe that we should be cutting unnecessary spending before we even consider a tax increase. Tax increases ought to be the last resort only after we have exhausted all other options. 2, now is not an appropriate time to raise taxes. High inflation, existing tax burden, et cetera, is forcing individuals and families to make cuts to their own personal budgets. It's wrong for the county, and I'll add for the city to add that burden. 3, Snohomish County voters, including residents of Lake Stevens, spoke loudly and clearly earlier this month when they rejected a local tax increase measure on the ballot. We should respect that mandate from voters rather than turn around and raise taxes just a few short weeks later. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you, Nathan. And I have no other green sheets. So we'll move forward with the agenda. And council business, Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'll start. I'd just like to thank Lake Stevens High School representing our community. Football team did great again, although they didn't three-peat, but we do have a new state championship team in the girls soccer team. So proud to be Lake Stevens resident here with our young kids displaying their talents across the state. So that's all I have. Councilmember Tangent.
Well, this is really loud. I was in Tampa saw some great volunteer platforms that maybe we can look at ways to get the community involved. I don't know if they already mentioned it last week. I was absent, but really neat platforms help people get involved, and some cities are saving millions of dollars on, having volunteers come and help in parks and stuff, and might be neat for something for us to explore that. The downtown's looking really, really beautiful as well. And thanks for all the storm work that's being done. And I know it was a lot of big job, but city's looking great and recovering well. Thank you.
Councilmember Ewing.
Yeah, so just Tessa Anastasio was an MVP of the state champion Lake Stevens, longtime Lake Stevens resident, outstanding performance that she did. Lake Stevens girls volleyball took 4th in state, so they did better than boys football, which did not place, but still did great. I was also recognized our Lady Vikings who were performing. So NLC, I just want to touch on a couple of things out with the mayor and with Marcus. The AI portion of that was really impressive to see how the cities are using that to just stretch taxpayer resources, and just saw some really incredible things that are being done in sewer districts and water places and within the cities. And I appreciate the mayor and the city staff being all over that. So just touch on what Marcus said with the Just Serve as a platform that was used. So to give you a comparison, Boise is 6 times the size of Lake Stevens. They annually have $1.5 million worth of volunteer service, equivalent of 26 FTEs that they get every year from that. So that's just one example of one city that's using that platform. Currently, Lake Stevens has no listings on Just Serve. So there's some work that can be done there. So just a comment I talked to the chief today about resiliency for our police officers. We had 2 fatalities over the last several weeks within 1 mile of my house. And then we had a rescue here from the boat launch where someone's life was saved. So our officers encounter some really difficult things. And so I just told the chief, asked him if there's anything that we can do to support the police officers and their resiliency, their families as they deal with these really tragic encounters that they have on a regular basis that most of us don't even think about. They see a lot of things and they can be severely impacted. So thanks to Chief Bezizos and for helping support our police officers as they serve this community.
Councilmember Georgetown.
Thank you. I, along with many of you and thousands of our neighbors, were out of power for a couple days last week. What was notable was that the morning after the storm, my son and I decided to leave Lake Stevens for the day and go find some warmth. And we had a hard time getting out of Lake Stevens. There were a lot of roads closed, a lot of trees down, and we saw numerous Lake Stevens vehicles just out doing the work, helping alongside PUD, getting roads closed, getting areas cleared. It was kind of amazing how just the presence that there was from our staff. We came back 24 hours later and we didn't have any roads closed anymore, and had I was amazed at the cleanup. Still saw a lot of vehicles out doing work, but there was just such tremendous improvement over that 24-hour period. And then, of course, getting our power back on was great. But I just want to commend not just the Public Works Department. I think you're the most visible department out there, but our police department, our parks department, IT department, all of the city staff that came together and really helped move our city quickly through a bit of a crisis. So thank you. That's all I have.
Councilmember Donahue.
Nothing for me.
Councilmember Daughtry.
I've got a storm report. No. I'd like to thank personally the mayor and about 10 other volunteers that came to my home on Saturday to help me clear the 3 trees off the house. We got hit pretty hard. It was an incredible storm. If it wouldn't have come from the east, everything would have been fine, but it came from the east. So all those trees decided, no, we don't want to be here anymore. Came and visited us. I saw several places in Lake Stevens and everywhere that also had storm damage. And now can really appreciate that. I do thank the people that came and helped. I also saw a lot of public works out there working. Even tonight, they're out there late still sweeping streets. So that I was thinking, wow, they're out there kind of late and they're still out there sweeping streets. So, and trying to get everything done. So I really appreciate everything the city does. I realized that we also had a whole lot of things happen, like at the Frisbee Golf park over here. I guess there was a lot of trees went down there, so that's gonna take some time to get back. So we've still got a long way to go. So hopefully everybody's safe.
Councilmember Shipman?
I attended the school board meeting on the 13th, and it was at the school district building. So that night they always recognize students and staff as well. So it starts off on a really positive note. They moved on to discuss the bond, which did not pass. It was very close, but not enough to pass. They needed 60% and they were just shy of that. So they did go over, they sent out a survey to people, what were their thoughts on the bond? What didn't they like? What did they like? And they're just kind of taking a step back now and looking at, what does the city want? How could they present it again in a way where it will pass and give us some of the needed improvements to our school? And then I just also want to just give my thanks to the city and to Public Works and to all of our citizens as well, who stepped up during the storm. So many people were out of power, and our neighbors, not even knowing that their neighbors, were opening their homes so they had a place to shower and a place to get something hot to eat. And it was just the sense of community that we had was tremendous and heartwarming. And I know it didn't come without a lot of hard work from a lot of people. So I just wanted to reach out and thank our Public Works, because they cleaned it up pretty darn fast. We were able to travel on our streets. Personally, I didn't have power out for very long. It came back on pretty quickly, so I was one of the lucky ones. But I want to give a shout out to the PUD as well for all their hard work.
Great, thank you. On to mayor's business.
Great. Yeah, I'd like to just echo the accolades for not only Public Works, but Parks. I had the opportunity Wednesday morning after the storm to sit in on the briefing of Public Works, and they also included the Parks folks to make sure we were getting out there and getting after it. It was a good briefing, and everyone got to work and was focused on what needed to be done. It was also good to see our citizens stepping up as well. When we went out to help out Kim, you could hear chainsaws just ringing all over the city. It was wonderful. It was beautiful. It was wonderful. Good to hear all the citizens, and it was great to read some of the stories that were going on social media. I need to find, there was a lady who was handing out soup. I need to find her and get her a coin or something. And just some great things going on in the city within our citizens stepping up and helping out their neighbor. So great work on that. And then accolades to the high school. That's I'm always amazed at the athletic excellence that we have in our city across the board. And what a great showing for the year with soccer, volleyball, and football. And just so the council knows, our staff is currently working with the high school to put together a parade. I think we're doing it on the 14th in conjunction with the Winterfest. So that'll be a great event. And then just to talk a little bit more about AI, this last week, I kicked off an AI initiative with staff. We've formed a work group. Folks from each department have sat down together, and we've looked, we have currently a policy within AI. We want to make sure that we're being ethical and doing the right things with AI. So we have currently a policy out there, a draft policy that's being reviewed by directors and will be stamped off in a couple of weeks. And that work group is kind of creating an early crawl phase within AI, looking at the policy, but also initial use cases where we can save time and be more efficient with especially our staff and staff time. So it's been fun to see people starting to use it and put together some good products. So good stuff. City department reports. Let's go with Max first. Max here, or is he online? Okay. I didn't see you back there.
Good evening, council members. Good evening, Mayor. The city recently went through the annual risk audit with our insurance pool, WCIA, and I want to take the opportunity to provide a brief summary of this audit. First item that was reviewed was the claims history for the city for 2024. While the total number of claims was slightly elevated to the previous year, the paid claims themselves were extremely low, with up to this point only $3,400. We had a total of 16 liability claims filed against the city so far. As you can imagine, a few of those just came in recently due to the windstorm. On a positive note, however, we only had 3 vehicle damage claims this year, so that's a great improvement to last year. Moving on to overall insurance coverage, not much has changed and coverage remains similar to the previous year, 2023. I do want to give a shout out to IT, though. They worked really hard with WCIA to get cyber extortion coverage, and we managed to get into the highest tier this year, which was not a given, given that the requirements to get into this bracket were even more stringent than last year. Like every year, the city also took advantage of the WCIA training reimbursement program. We managed to get roughly $9,200 reimbursement for employee training back, and an additional $3,000 grant for conference attendance. All in all, 24 employees could take advantage of that and could go through training through this reimbursement program. Lastly, the last item was WCIA conducted a special topics audit. Last year it was police, if you might remember. This year was employment practices. Director Warrington completed this audit this year, and it was concluded successful without any need for any corrective actions. This was my brief overview. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, and thank you for your time.
Anything for Max? All right, good stuff. Good work. All right, and we're going to throw in Aaron while we're at it to do a storm report for us.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. My name is Aaron Halverson. I'm the city's Public Works Director. I really appreciate the comments from the council on the response for the storm. And I'll tell a really short story because I know we're already into the meeting here a bit. But you should know that you have a very competent, qualified, and exceptional Public Works and Parks Department. And I'll tell you a story about them. So 2 weeks ago, they went through their chainsaw training. We sort of saw this storm coming. We said, let's go through chainsaw safety training. Let's make sure our saws are ready to go. Let's make sure we have chaps. Let's make sure everyone's ready to go. Okay. And they did. They went through the training, ready to perform. Monday morning, they get together and say, we think there's a weather event coming. There's a bomb cyclone we're seeing on the forecast. We should start planning. So they start organizing overtime shifts and folks who will serve standby, making sure, again, everything is ready to go. Tuesday, shift ends at about 4 o'clock, and they put 5 people on standby. So that means there are 5 people ready to answer their personal phones and come in when the storm is happening. We don't wait. Other jurisdictions might wait till the next day. No. We have 5, 6 people ready to go. Storm starts. The police department opens what we call an Easy Alert. It's an app that everyone has on their phones, employees and the school district has on their phones to begin an emergency event response. And it pings my phone at 11 o'clock. I pick it up and start looking at it. And it's an officer who started an event. That's when the wind got really bad around 10:30 on Tuesday night. Okay, so our on-call employees are now watching it, and they're calling their 5 standby employees, and the chainsaws start to run and they start to close roads. And the PD is taking pictures. Officers are taking pictures of down trees on roads, and they're triaging it live in this text thread that we can watch. And the school superintendent, the assistant superintendent, is watching it and asking questions in the morning. Well, can we go to school? What roads are closed? Well, she can see it happening, right? So the crew works from about 10:30, 11 o'clock until 2:30 in the morning, closing roads and removing trees. You probably didn't know they were there. And so by the time Councilmember Jorstad gets up, she goes, it's still bad, but the roads are closed. You probably saw cones in front of most of the road closures or signs. That's unique. Not every jurisdiction did that. The crew shows up Wednesday morning. They get together with the Parks Department, all of Parks. We get a message from the supervisor in Parks, or I think it was Sarah as well, saying, my team is your team. Let's go respond. They worked several more days, documenting, all the while documenting their costs. And what you have in front of you is this storm report. All the while documenting their work and trying to make sure the roads are open. Now, one of the points of frustration they have is PUD is working throughout the county. So we can't work on the trees that are in the road that are wrapped in utility lines. So those roads stay closed until the wires are out. I think most roads are back open as of now. But what they did is they collected around 100 yards of debris. There were more than 30 trees removed, 40 yards of wood chips were repurposed. We only had around a 50-mile-an-hour wind before most of the weather stations went down. Could have been higher. In the end, there were 331 so far, not in the end. So far, there have been 331 active equipment hours with a cost of $20,889. And there have been 26 employees who have responded with 456 crew hours with a cost of around $30,680. All told, 50,000 or so labor and equipment. We're still gathering information. So I can't, this will change, right? This is fluid. We're still running the sweeper. We're still gathering data, but that one wind event hit this community for at least $50,000. And that doesn't say anything about parks. And I think Sarah might have something to add.
Yeah, I can go ahead and share my screen and just give you a short report for parks. And thank you, Aaron. It was a great overview for Parks and Public Works. So the Parks team spent the first about 2 days jumping over to the streets team and making sure the first priority as many streets that could get opened were opened, and meanwhile started to inventory the parks and the damage. By Friday, we were able to hit the parks pretty well. This is an inventory that we have so far of the park's damage and mainly trees that were lost. The majority of tree loss is in GPA areas or areas that are left to be more natural, such as Catherine Creek, the disc golf. We did have an overtime shift. I believe we had 6 or 7 crew members work around 8-hour days on Saturday. On that day, they opened all of the trails through Catherine Creek, as well as the reserve trails. Catherine Drive, and I think one other location as well. So what that means is they just bucked their way through trees that were fallen, and then with equipment moved what they could into piles. So we still have a lot of cleanup to go in those locations, but everything is now passable. We've also responded to all public complaints about leaning trees or hazard trees on property lines. We encourage any additional concerns to continue to be submitted through the portal so that we can respond to that. One of the most notable property damage things that we encountered was a fence that fell over between us and the neighbors at Davies Park. We responded the very next day and propped this up and made a temporary fix. We need to analyze it for a more permanent fix, which may mean needing to rebuild the entire fence. And then I just have one more photo here. This was from Catherine Creek, where we lost somewhere between 20 and 30 major trees, most of them just healthy and uprooted, was the determination as we reviewed. And that's all I have. Unless you have anything else to add, Aaron.
No, thank you, Director Garceau. Again, I just want to reiterate that you have an exceptional Public Works and Parks Department. Yeah, I live in Everett, love Everett. They're not doing that. So, thank you.
And Aaron, can you explain, it's a declared emergency, but so that cost, we're getting reimbursed all of it, some of it? How's that work?
Yes,
that's
please.
a Max question.
So it depends. Currently, the county and the state are assessing how much the overall damage is. And if we reach a certain threshold, we're eligible for public assistance through FEMA. This process basically started now and will take, I assume, the next 2 to 3 weeks until we know if we're eligible or not, if the county and the state meet those thresholds. If we meet those thresholds and public assistance will kick in, we can apply and we'll get back, I think, 80%, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's like 60% from federal money and 20% from the state. Please, those numbers could be a little off, but something in the ballpark.
Okay. Any questions for Aaron, Sarah, Max?
So I'll just add, so PUD has been working 16-hour days since Tuesday, and continue even through today. So if you know anyone or the spouses of people that are working that, I mean, they're grinding away and working really hard along with our amazing public works and folks. So there's other people that are doing great work as well.
Well, and outside agencies also, I saw one of the trucks from Benton, must have been Benton City, Benton PUD. So it's nice to see that cooperation as well. So.
Yeah. Great report, Aaron, Sarah. Let's move forward then. Can I get a motion to pass the consent agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
We've got a motion to pass the consent agenda and a second. Do I have any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, pass the consent agenda. Let's move to discussion items. 12A, 2024 budget amendment number 3, Barb.
Thank you, council. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, now let me get back to my screen. Thanks. Okay, so this is our third and final budget amendment for the 2024 budget period. Before we jump into the amendments that are included in the budget, I wanted to go over the adjustments that we've made in the pandemic recovery funds. As you know, the pandemic recovery funds, they were previously ARPA funds. We've utilized a lot of those funds, and then we have the majority of them set aside for specific projects and or uses. I did take a screenshot of what those budgeted things are. The darker green are already spent. The lighter green are things that have been allocated budget, as well as we've already started spending. Things that we started spending was from 22, 23, 24. So the two adjustments in this one, so budget amendments are done when you either need to increase expenditure dollar amount or increase a revenue so you can increase an expenditure amount, or if you're going to transfer budget from one fund to another. Adjustments are just made behind the scenes, usually within the same fund, just between line items. And so in the pandemic recovery funds, we have all of these items that are allocated, and then we have a certain amount of money. You can see at the bottom at this point, the available for priority reallocation is about $470,000. We actually budget the entire amount in the budget. So through the budget process, we budget the entire thing in a capital purchase placeholder line item. So that's why these aren't included in your budget amendment, but I did want to bring them forward as reallocations. So they're going to move them from one line to another. So one of the items was the police station HVAC project that came to council in August and was determined that we just needed to get a cost and we needed to get it done. There are some grant funds coming through this as well. We did recently get the bid, and I believe we have a contract in place, if I'm not mistaken. The amount I've been given for that is about $134,000 for the full project, and then the grant is $76,000. So the grant amendment is included in the actual amendment that you will see in the next couple of slides, just because that's a new revenue source. So we're adding that in there. And that item is in the yellow, so police HVAC. And then there's the park acquisition for Eagle Ridge. I believe this was brought forward to council as a discussion that we had an opportunity to purchase it, and we were looking to whether we would lease it back or purchase it outright to complete the Eagle Ridge Park section, the property. So right now I have a placeholder in there. The price is to be determined, so I did not include that in the slide, as that still needs to be negotiated and go through council. So I just wanted to make council aware that those two items have been included in the pandemic recovery allocations. So on to the actual budget amendments. As you can see, we have a summary of the prior budget amendments and then the current budget amendment. The current budget amendment includes adding resources and expenditures, and in the end, increases our ending fund balance amongst all citywide funds by almost $45,000. The summary shows only the funds that are included in the second budget amendment. So this is where I go through your various budget amendment details. The next slide will go through the grouped amendment by project or reason. So as I mentioned, the HVAC grant is in here. That is a revenue that was brought to council in August. The opioid, we've been receiving opioid settlements. The revenue was included in a previous amendment, but the expenditure was not. And that is being used by the police department for opioid drug related. I believe they used it for scanners of some sort, non-touch scanners. And so that is an adjustment to the budget, but as I mentioned, the revenue was included previously, so we're just including the expenditure. A couple of park items that came forward throughout the year. One was to relocate the Frontier Heights play structure to get it away from the power lines. That came to council in October. And then North Cove floating dock. The updated cost I got on that was about $174,000. This is just finalizing that increase in the budget outlay, and that did come to council in June. We have the capital drainage, the downtown regional storm facility. This is actually budgeted in 2025, but the design and some of the work is starting in 2024. So we're actually putting into the 2024 budget, and anything remaining will just roll into 2025. And then the last one was just an increase in bond fees. Normally I wouldn't do a budget amendment for $56, but that fund is just for the payment of bonds. And so if we don't add the $56, then we'll be over budget in that fund. So. Now, this is your grouped amendments. There aren't very many, so this is going to go pretty quickly. Law enforcement, as you know, they received a grant for their accreditation. This just includes the budget revenue and the budget expenditure. The next one is just an operating, the sewer and the city have a cost sharing agreement for the use of the decant facility. The district's portion of the utilities and operating costs go into the sewer fund that we have, and then we just bill them for the reimbursement. So this just takes into consideration a placeholder for the amount that we're going to bill them and get reimbursed. The next one is the 91st sidewalk project. The project was actually awarded a TIB grant in May, and this just allocates the grant revenues to the appropriate funds where the expenditures were paid for. The next is the museum. So the fund, we actually collected money for the sale of the property right here on Mill Spur was put into a specific 305 fund. The project is actually going to be done in a different fund. So this is just moving whatever was left in that fund into the new fund for the purpose of the museum. And then the 24th, 91st, this is just a reconciliation of the revenues that we received from the TIB grant. Interest, we have not finalized those payments to the vendor since we have not, we're going through a lot of process right now. We have public works, engineering, planning, finance kind of working on what the final cost on that. So this just adjusts the revenues and the expense budget to account for the accumulation of the revenues. And then the records, this is for the citywide Stone Share Records Migration Project. Instead of just bringing forward the portion that is going to happen in 2024, we're bringing forward the entire project funds for the entire project, and then we'll just roll forward what's remaining in 2025 for the remainder of the departments that aren't going to get completed in 2024. This is just looking at the org chart. So there's two positions in the org chart that are being captured here. No additional dollar budget was needed, no change in the actual budget amounts. The vacant park ranger position was eliminated with the addition of the park maintenance worker. This was brought to council for discussion by Director Garceau back July 16th. So that did eliminate the park ranger and add the park maintenance. And then the vacant quartermaster position was retitled to inventory control specialist. And that happened with the ratification of the Teamsters agreement back in end of 2023, but that title change was never captured in the org chart. So that's just a title, basically from a placeholder title to an official title. As you know, this position has actually been reclassified to a assistant mechanic inventory control specialist through the 2025 budget process to better align with the department needs. So that was all I had for the 2024 final budget amendment. So if there's any discussion, any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we will bring back the amendment for action or consent on December 10th.
I'm comfortable with it being on the consent agenda.
What's that?
I'm comfortable with it being on consent.
Okay, anything else for Barb? All right. Good work, Barb. Appreciate it. And Commander Thomas, let's talk about community service officer position.
Thank you, Mayor. Kelly, were you gonna try to pop that up? Thank you, ma'am. We're gonna just show you just a real quick kind of PowerPoint that Chief and I did when we were gone this past week, just to kind of unravel things here. And you want to just go to the next one. So this is we just want to give you a timeline of how we got here from the original park ranger position. 2023 park ranger position placed under parks. And then in 2024, an MOU and job description was done. It was moved to Public Works Teamsters, and they voted to have that folded into Teamsters. In August of 24, discussions were made basically about the initial discussions of what were the park rangers going to be wearing and kind of overall job descriptions. And PD had a little concerns with training and stuff like that. So to get it back to us, HR had to do some work to kind of unravel it from Teamsters to see if our guild would accept this position as a CSO position with additional duties. And right now it's just waiting on job description finalization. So here is the crux of what we were thinking. This would be our CSO position. The top bullet point is kind of what I was referring to, some concerns with it allows oversight of high liability position that has enforcement powers to be placed under the police department. Basically, our CSO and this new position and would have been Parks Ranger would be carrying a less lethal option as a pepper ball like Margaret Cooper had on tonight, as you saw. Well, that is trained by our police department with people that are trained in that. Our supervisors are the ones that would have to approve any kind of force reports and all training requirements that would happen. CSO can use police department and other law enforcement databases under PD authority. Police department command staff can properly review and use of force incidents. CSO will partner with Parks and Recreation to learn about problems in the park. And then some more bullet points of kind of a job description of enforced parking issues, enforce malicious mischief, vandalism, trespass authority, marine inspections, boat launch fees and enforcement. And then the parks can go about and focus on the maintenance of the park itself. And that is basically the gist of the thought about having it in a CSO instead of a park ranger.
Any questions for the commander?
So how will the police department better be able to handle the uses of force versus the Parks Department and reviewing those?
Because the police department is the resident experts on use of force training, the less lethal options that they carry. All of our supervisors have gone through supervisory liability when it comes to use of force. And it's an all in-house. It's a high liability thing. So, and that's kind of our realm. So we have the steps in place to not only read the reports, but understand the training that is necessary to do it.
So it helps limit the city's liability because you already have the expertise there versus a different department that may not have that expertise.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, so the position that we approved as the park ranger is being moved over to the police department as a community services officer. Is this requesting a second community services offer in addition to that former park ranger?
This would be the second. So CSO Cooper that just came back. She's one, but yes, this would be asking for a second CSO position.
And to clarify, I believe it was last June that I came to council and we had held off on hiring the park ranger and instead did the crew worker. And so that basically put one full-time crew worker in our department, and then we'll be moving what was the park ranger over to a second CSO, which will allow for better coverage 7 days a week, of course.
So that position, that park ranger position is the second CSO.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any other discussion on that? Oh, Kim, go ahead.
Hi, at first I just wanted to thank you for explaining how all of this is working. That was really helpful. I think this is going to be a big benefit to our parks during the busy time of the seasons, the spring and summer and early fall, as our parks seem to be getting busier and busier. And due to the city and of course our parks department, we've got the most beautiful parks around, so everyone wants to come spend time here. So thank you for this presentation, and I think that we will definitely benefit from it.
I just have one more comment. I've just listened to it. It's really impressive. I listened to the collaboration between the Parks Department and Public Works for the storm response. And then you see like with the parks and the police officers, as far as the collaboration within the units. The collaboration is really impressive to see. And what I like to see is just people doing what they can for the benefit of the citizens, and so I like the collective team approach that we just see tonight. We just seen 2 examples of that, 2 examples of many. So thank you to staff and for others responsible for that collaboration.
So if council does want to put this back into the 2025 budget, we'll need to bring back a budget amendment for that, if council's in favor of that, as we eliminated that park ranger position when we added the park maintenance. So in the 2025 budget, there is no park ranger, and there's only one CSO, which is Margaret Cooper's position. So if council's in favor, then we can bring back a budget amendment to add that additional CSO position.
I think it would be helpful to see what that impact looks like. So would like to see that coming up, not on consent, I guess. I'd like to have further discussion once we look at the numbers.
That would be a separate budget amendment from the one that was presented tonight.
That would be a 2025 budget amendment, right? Not a 20.
The one tonight is 2024. We'll bring back a 2025.
Got it. Yep.
I would agree with that.
For clarification on bringing it back, would you like to see kind of what that CSO position would be able to cover as one person versus 2, kind of with schedule and duties?
That'd be helpful.
Okay.
As well as the dollar amounts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Sarah, that was kind of similar thing you had with 1 versus 2. Like, hey, you got one person, as amazing as it might be, they can only be at one place at one time, and it doesn't allow for coverage. So I'm supportive of that additional position.
All right, great. Appreciate the staff's work on that and council's comments. Let's move forward to the sewer utility tax discussion. Barb.
Let me get in here and share my screen again. Okay, good evening again, council. So we are going to have the utility tax discussion. We are focusing on sewer utility. There are 2 RCWs that, or sections of RCWs that allow the city or authorize the city to impose tax on the providers of utilities. The first RCW is just regarding telephone, gas, and electric utilities, and there is a maximum of 6%. The other RCW I have listed here authorize the city to impose excise taxes on other utility businesses, and that does include the sewer, and there is no maximum on that. Excuse me. So our current utility taxes that we have imposed, we have telephone, gas, electric, water, and garbage, and they are all at 6%. Additional utility taxes and other revenue resources are reviewed annually during the annual budget process to address the additional needs of the city. This is what is meant by untapped revenues, but I can see how that may have a negative connotation. So we will keep that in mind in the future and explain that a little bit better, that we are looking at what our needs are and where the resources can come from. So council had asked for a bit of history on the utility tax. One of the specific questions was why we did not already have a sewer utility tax when we had the rest. So I did some research into the agendas and minutes over the past few years to formulate a response. Prior to 2018, we had a 6% utility tax on telephone and a 5% utility tax on gas and electric. In 2018, we brought forward a recommendation to increase the gas, electric to 6% and add water, garbage, sewer, and stormwater at 6% as well. Council made a recommendation during a council meeting to remove the stormwater tax due to the recent rate study that was happening and the rate increase, and to reduce the sewer tax to 2%. During the final presentation of the ordinance, council had recommended to also remove the sewer tax until it was known if the district intended to increase rates, which they did. Then the ordinance was passed authorizing the 6% on the providers of telephone, gas, electric, water, garbage. And then it also consolidated all of the utility taxes into one Lake Stevens Municipal Code chapter. As I mentioned, we go through and we look at these every year. In 2024, staff recommended adding the sewer utility tax to support road-related maintenance and capital projects. Staff also recommends updating the definition of gross income to include all income. That came after a recent review of the city code by our legal utility tax legal experts to align with other cities' rulings, including, I believe it was Puget Sound Energy versus City of Bellingham. If you have questions on that, I think Greg could answer some of those. But it was ruled in favor of the city that the definition of gross income should include all income, not just that of the actual billings. Or can. So I had this in your packet. This is just utility taxes imposed by the city, and I did filter it down by just Snohomish County cities. Some cities were not included in these results in the AWC survey, so that's where this came from, the AWC survey for 2024. Sometimes cities fail to actually fill out the survey, or in some cases they're late, and so they don't actually make it on. But for the sake of this conversation, I did go and look at the ones that did not necessarily have the information and added some of those from their websites when the information was readily available. So there are a couple of towns on there that I did not have information gathered for: City of Index and City of Mill Creek. And then I did want to mention that the ones in pink, highlighted in pink there, the town of Woodway imposes a 6% utility tax on sewer and a 10% franchise fee. And then the city of Mukilteo doesn't impose a utility tax on sewer, but does charge a 4% franchise fee on utilities. So looking through the AWC tax survey, I went through and I looked at total cities. So there was 153 cities responding. 41, there was no utility tax or franchise fee on sewer. For those that did impose the tax, the range was anywhere from, I believe it was a 0.04 or 0.4% to 41%. The average was 8.74%, and the most common was 6%, and that was 38% of the responding. In Snohomish County, of the 20 cities in Snohomish County, 18 reporting, 6 had no utility tax or franchise fee for sewer. The range is a little closer, 5 to 20%. Average still right around that 8.21%. And the most common, again, is 6% at 45% of the reporting entities charging the 6% utility tax. Now, I did include the sewer utility tax needs and uses provided by Director Halverson. He has presented this to you a couple of times. If you have any information or any discussion on that, he can go through that some more. Let me know and I can pass it over to him if you have more questions on the uses of this. But one of the things that we did discuss is obviously we'd be using it for maintenance, and then for some of the capital, we could also apply for Public Works Trust Fund loans to do some of this projects and pay it back with the utility tax as well, if that's something you'd like to do. And this is a look at the sewer utility tax estimates by tax rate. And these estimates are based on the annual gross income totals provided by district staff. So as you can see, they provided 2022, 2023 actual gross income as well as 2024 estimated income. So it's approximately 228,000 per 1% of utility tax.
So Barb, there was the public comment tonight, said gross, income versus, sewer, income.
Utility fees.
Yes. Has there been a distinction made in any of the, documentation that we have?
We have updated it to the gross income. We've actually updated the definition per our legal counsel, which does include all income, not just utility fees. I will say that there's not a large difference between those dollar amounts, as the majority of the sewer district revenue does come from utility fees for residential and commercial. The connection fees and developments, that sort of thing, is a very small proportion of their revenues. So
By small, are we talking like less than 10%?
yes.
Okay.
I have a question. Director Halverson, didn't you say that the sewer district really didn't put together a budget to take care of these items? Am I?
Yeah, that's correct, Councilmember Tagent. That we discussed that at a recent sewer utility committee meeting and talked about the need for pavement preservation associated with their sewer mains and their sewer manholes. And they said they don't plan for that, not in their capital budget, but they're happy to give us iron, which is the lids themselves, should the city undertake that effort.
So they haven't budgeted for the cost associated, nor the manpower or anything along those lines?
That's correct.
Okay.
And just so we're clear, what we're talking about is when you drive the city and you run over a manhole cover and it jostles your Starbucks coffee, that's a sewer problem. That's a sewer district problem. It's not a city problem. But they're not budgeting that money to take care of those problems. And the same with side connections that are sunk. If there's a road problem in the city right now, I'm not going to say all of them are sewer district problems, but a lot of them are because of a lack of maintenance and the lack of budgeting to maintain the work the sewer district does on our roads. So that's a great use case for why we would do this tax.
Absolutely.
The other one is the promised connections of sewer into our industrial area to create jobs and to create economic development, which was in the original agreement of the sewer district and the city that they failed to comply with. And that's another use case that these dollars could be used towards to build out that area of the city.
Well, wasn't it my understanding that the sewer district had $1 million plus that they decided to pay back early because they said they didn't need those funds? Meanwhile, Director Wright that was here said that that people are struggling with inflation, and those dollars could have been used to help subsidize right now. But they gave it back because Director Wright, I think, was one of the voters on that, who voted to say, I'm going to give that back instead of helping the ratepayers with these issues or using them to help with these issues. Is that correct? Do you remember that too?
I would agree.
Yeah.
I think it was stated at utility committee meeting in October that historically they'd spent about $10,000 to $11,000 a year on these type of maintenance things, which, you break it down at what, $1,700, $1,800 a manhole. It's 5 manholes a year.
And how many do we have in the city? Approximately 3,700?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that my math doesn't.
I'm surprised that the sewer district doesn't take care of this, nor do they budget for it, or they've mishandled $1 million plus that they gave back when they have a terrific amount of things to take care of. But I guess it was Commissioner Koshi who thought that they had a surplus of money and were doing great and could give that $1 million back. It's really disappointing to see that they can't take care of their obligations.
Yeah, the major problem is, this exacerbates our road problems with these manholes and so forth, and the failing or sinking utility lines, things of that sort. It leads to other problems that the city has to fix. And so, how do we do that?
And the funds that we use to fix those problems are funds that we then can't use to keep our roads at the levels that we've been recommended to
Exactly.
keep them. we're shirking our other responsibilities because.
Yeah, and so
having
it kind of gets back to definition. Is this really a untapped revenue source? I don't know as though it's an untapped revenue source. It's a need that needs to be addressed that impacts the city, like you say, in other directions. And unfortunately, I don't believe the sewer district, as Marcus has said, is allocating resources to correct those problems. And so it kind of falls on our shoulders because we have the roads. So.
And because our constituents, when their Starbucks coffee is spilling, they're calling us, wanting to know when we're going to fix the roads.
Right.
Not us, they're calling Aaron, but.
And we're using resources that could go towards sidewalks, other things to take care of an obligation that the sewer district is supposed to be taken care of.
Yep.
And I just wanted to add that driving around the city, you don't have to look long or look hard to see around manhole covers where there's literally gaping asphalt. It's not like it's just dipping. There's holes in the road around these manhole covers in several places in the city.
So I think one thing I just want to make clear, the distinction between our budget and the county budget. I don't see the mayor with a surplus. There's been no audit of the mayor's office to find numerous positions to the tune of millions of dollars. And so there's no slush fund set aside for the mayor to have staff members in his cabinet that this audit found. So I think the comparison to our budget versus the other budget may not be a fair comparison, but I think the argument that we should be very judicious in our resources is actually very appropriate to consider.
Absolutely. Any discussion? Well, any questions for Barb?
I was curious about one of the lines in the staff report and just wondered if you could expand a bit. Let me pull it up. I think it said something to the effect of, it's at the bottom of the second page of the staff report, page 98 in our packet. It stated that there was a possibility of starting with a low rate the first year and increasing it annually. But the district recommended enacting the final intended rate at the start, noting the effect ongoing rate increases have on customers. Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
That was a discussion that was had at the recent utility committee meeting. And one of our council members had made a suggestion that, we hadn't set a rate. They were discussing what the rate would be, what the timing would be. And one of the suggestions was we could start at a lower rate and then increase it annually. And I believe it was Commissioner Koshi had said, no, that's not a good idea. The customers get rate shock every year when you do this. And so he had recommended just selecting the rate that you intend to get to and just going there. And so, and he did agree that it is up to city council at the percentage, the timing, what the usage is. And then we discussed some joint communication to go out we could put it in their mailers, that kind of thing as well. So his suggestion was to just choose the rate and go with it and don't stagger.
Thank you. That's helpful. And then I just want to clarify, it is the sewer district's decision about whether to levy this tax onto the ratepayers. Is that accurate?
So it's not a tax to the customers.
Thank you.
We tax the utility provider. It is in their authority under their RCWs that they can pass it on to the customer as a fee. So it's not actually a tax that's getting imposed on the customer. It's a fee.
I appreciate that
So, yes.
distinction. Thank you. So we are deciding whether to levy a tax on the sewer district. They
Correct.
will then decide whether or not they will have a fee that is levied on their customers.
Correct.
And given that, my assumption is that then if we decide on a 6% utility tax, their fee could be less than that 6%. It's up to them to decide how much that fee actually is.
They could decide to make that fee less, or they could make that fee slightly more, as if they pass a fee, if they create a fee, an additional fee onto customers, that gets taxed as well. So when they actually pass that on, that proportion gets taxed. So the customer, when they see it on their bill as a effect of city tax, it'll be slightly more than what our percentage is that we actually are charging the district.
That would really surprise me since they gave $1 million+ back because they were doing so well. Is what they had told the sewer committee, that they're doing so well that they could effectively give the $1 million back because financially they were doing so well. And the future showed that they were going to continue to do well. So if they do that, that would be a real surprise to me.
Sorry, Barb, I just want to clarify something that you said. So if we are looking at this as a mechanism to, I guess, maintain sewer infrastructure, and we have to do it through this tax on the provider, that it would be more expensive ultimately to the ratepayer for us to do it this way by taxing the provider than say if the sewer district just increased fees on their own to raise the same amount of money. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a question for Director Halverson. I apologize for putting you on the spot. So do we have a general idea, kind of like we've done with the roads and analysis, to like know which ones are most in need of repair? And if we don't, what would that look like to get an analysis so we kind of had an idea what we're looking at?
Councilmember Ewing, that's an interesting question. We have done some analysis. We need to do more. We have a robust pavement preservation system, right? We monitor our pavement condition, and some of that is associated with underground utilities, like we're talking about. I can certainly bring back more thorough numbers, but if you extrapolate the number of sewer manholes at around 3,700, we could definitely take a sample, and I think we've already done that. I can get that back to you, but something like perhaps 10% are inadequately level with the road. We start to run those numbers. That's 370 pretty quickly, where we're starting to run at $4,000 or $5,000 each. A pretty high cost to do that. Certainly happy to bring that back to you. It's in the packet. There is some suggestions. So we suggested 60 sewer lid adjustments each year, and pavement preservation at $100,000 a year. And so that's overlays and trench restoration. So 60 lids at about $100,000 and pavement restoration about $100,000 starts a program where we're doing work a little more proactively rather than reactively. That's probably the best way to do it.
Okay.
A really rigorous study would be difficult.
Yeah, whatever you guys have is the best way to address that. I mean, you guys are the experts. I just want to make sure that we have something that's, it's a strategic approach to that.
I have a question, follow up with that, Director Halverson. Has the sewer district done a study on their stuff that goes along with this? Like we've done, we spent a lot of money and time to make sure that our constituents are being roads to the best of our ability, or putting together a program. You would think the sewer district would have done the same thing. Have they done any kind of report, any kind of study that would help us understand that?
With regard to trench sort of settling or stability, not that I'm aware of, or stability of manhole lids. Absolutely. I asked them the question at the sewer utility committee meeting. We talked through this, and it just really isn't, it doesn't seem like it's their interest, right? It's not in their interest to make sure the roadways are maintained. That's our interest. That's the city's interest. They're willing to partner in terms of providing iron, but they're not really interested in being proactive in that way.
Never mind.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Kim, you have your hand up.
So, yeah, a couple of the fellow councilmen asked questions I was thinking of, but just to clarify, technically, legally, whose job is it to take care of where the asphalt has sunken or where it's chipped away around manhole covers? I fully recognize it's the city's responsibility to keep our roads up, and, safety is, paramount here. But whose responsibility is this? Because if it is indeed the sewer district's responsibility to maintain, correct, and repair those things, and they just don't want to do it and aren't doing it, then by taxing the sewer district, like we were saying, we're doing their job for them, and in a way getting reimbursed. But as a citizen, I mean, I would be thinking, well, it sounds like you're taxing the sewer district, but they're just going to pass that on to us. So really you're taxing us. So before implementing a tax, is there some way to determine who's responsible for doing that? And if it is indeed the sewer district, do we have any power to make them live up to their commitments to our roads? Does that make sense? Because I would rather have the sewer district step up and take care of their responsibilities than put a tax on them that they're ultimately going to be passing down to our citizens. They should be doing this to begin with, if I'm understanding this correctly.
I think we're all looking at you, Greg.
Will you put the microphone
Right there?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, ultimately, the city has a responsibility for the roadways, right? And if cars driving the road get damaged, accidents happen because of a runoff or whatever, it's we bear the ultimate responsibility for the roadway. All sorts of utilities put things in the roadway. You know, we've got besides water line, we have water lines, we have sewer lines, we have in some places electrical lines, we have telecommunications lines. All sorts of things get put into the to the street, and those are done either by permit, right? They're done by permit, or in some cases they're done through a franchise. And I was trying to remember, does the sewer district have a franchise? Are they a franchisee, or are they?
We do not have a franchise agreement, no.
Yeah. That's one way to address the problem, is to require either through the franchise or through our permit process to put greater responsibility on the utility that's putting in that infrastructure. As a practical matter, it's very difficult to do. It's very difficult to, I mean, if you have a manhole sitting there above the street level, that's pretty easy. That's pretty easy to spot. Why that occurred, is it the responsibility is because of what's happening with the sewer line? Or is it changes that are happening because of cars traveling down the roadway? So whose responsibility is that? It's arguable. I mean, we could try to clarify that in permits or in franchise agreements. But this is probably a much easier way to address the problem. Because the problem is there's this structure, infrastructure within our streets that whatever the cause of it is creating a problem. So can we easily go back against the sewer district and try to get them to put more money into their budget to take care of these problems? Not easily, no. And this is probably a much simpler way to address the issue. And it takes away the fight, takes away the argument of who is responsible.
Yeah, and I think and just to give the sewer district their due, like, they're not set up to do what our public works can do. They're set up to run the water treatment facility, and they're set up to do collections. They're not set up to redo the infrastructure issues that their work has created. We are. So
I got a follow-up to that, Director Halverson. So with this additional workload, I don't know how much that would impact your staffing, because I know your staff are stretched thin. And so, you know, that may have an impact on staffing if we are to take this on.
Yeah, we've talked about that. I think that a portion of this fee, if we're going to do this work, we need to collect it for engineering services and public works operation services, of course.
Okay.
So it's not really that I mean, first off, the sewer district would contract for that work. Would we also be contracting for the work on the ground?
It would be both ways. both ways. Occasionally the crews would raise iron, but we would also hire out annually repairs as well. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Does the council want to go into a discussion of what we're talking about as for what your palette is for the percentage amount?
Sure, I'll open that discussion. We had within our budget process a 2% proposed budget. I don't think that's enough. As Director Halverson indicated, there was a brief discussion, which I brought up, of kind of stair stepping this in so that we can gear up for this rather just, plopping this problem on our desk. So I guess I would advise that maybe we go that route to some degree, whether it's a 3, I don't think the 2% is enough. But maybe start at a 3 or 4, and then maybe in a year or 2, we go up to the 5 or 6 and just kind of get it in place and work into this so that we can solve some of these problems. Again, just kind of looking at the need that's identified, the number of manholes that are out there. I think we all drive around our city. We see areas that are in need of attention, and the dollars that it's going to take to start whittling away those problems. I don't think 2% is adequate. Again, I would think probably 3 or 4% in the first year or 2, and then stair stepping on up to a little bit higher rate after that.
Was that accurate when the commissioner stated that the 6% increase would equal a $70 yearly increase for, was that your comment? Thanks,
Yeah,
Nathan.
because it's $99 a month. And so if you had 6%, it's roughly $6 a month. And so 6 times 12 is 72. So it's actually just a titch below 72.
But we don't know for certain that that's the fee that they would levy. Is that?
I think we can be relatively confident that they would.
Okay. Okay.
That's a guess, though. I mean,
Well, if you look at your phone bills and stuff, you'll see that the fee that they charge us for the tax that we have on our phone utility taxes is
The
much,
same.
much higher than, and that's allowed by law for them to do that because they wrap all their admin costs into that.
it was suggested that we just go to the amount of what we thought. Isn't that what Commissioner?
Right. Suggestion.
That we just go to the 6 if that's what we need.
Well, the discussion was if we would do it and have another public hearing to raise it again, rather, just put it in place. Because I said, maybe we just go 1, 2, 3, 4 in the first 4 years. And he was like, oh, you just need to do it all at once. Well, the discussion wasn't to do it every year. The discussion was to put it in an ordinance so it's in place and it just automatically happens.
Oh, to do
So-
it tiered by ordinance.
Yeah.
Are we
You
able
just
to do
address it
that?
in
Can I
one
ask
fell swoop. Pardon?
Greg Rubstello, are we able to do that? Put that in the ordinance to make that change over a certain number of years like we do in the fees resolution? Or does the RCW disallow that?
No, we could stair step it. I mean, instead of providing, you could provide a rate in the ordinance you pass, 4% for 2025, 2026, or however you wanted to do it, and then step it up to a higher rate beginning on a date specific in the future. You could do that now if you want to take, if you want to do that stair stepping approach.
Councilman Peterson, are you suggesting stair step it so we could see if the sewer district passes all that on to them?
To some degree, but also to get a program in place rather than just kind of dropping it on Director Halverson's desk and saying, here you go. It's going to take some time to kind of get up, like you say, analyze what's the true problem out there and kind of prioritize the list as what needs to be done.
I would go with a 4, 5, 6.
Well, to that,
Sorry.
to that point, when would we realistically look at starting this? Because, I mean, our relationship with the sewer district might look very different a year from now, depending on how, things play out. And so I guess I question, how much of this we need to tackle at this moment versus, waiting to see whether the sewer district is part of the city and we can just deal with it all internally.
Problem with that, Ryan, is we've said that for the last 10 years.
Well, like,
At least
I guess-
10 years.
Right, but right now there's, an upcoming trial date, so I expect a resolution one way or the other fairly soon. So that's what I'm kind of, obviously, I don't know, Greg, what your thoughts are on possibility of an appeal and things being drug out, but
Yeah, this is not going to get resolved within the next year.
okay.
Can I add some additional information that might be helpful? So what's happening right now, I just want to reemphasize or reiterate, is the Streets Fund, which is a fund that is going to go into the red in a few years, or a year. Barb has been warning us, is subsidizing maintenance of sewer manhole lids and sewer trenches. And my team is working diligently to balance the Streets Fund so that we can make sure that the striping that happened this year can happen again next year. This is not helping us. Us raising iron is not helping. Concurrently, we're designing a sewer main on 131st Avenue Northeast, and the city is paying for that design because we can't come to an agreement with the sewer district on their share on a project that's in their capital improvement plan to fund. So Streets Fund continues to subsidize this issue, and we have this pending in the red situation for street capital and for street operations. So I encourage you guys to encourage the council and the mayor to think through that and think about how do we continue to provide service to the community if we're dying by 1,000 cuts this way.
I have one
Yeah,
question
I
I
gotta
just
be-
want to clarify is when we say subsidizing, I don't feel like, Greg, and sorry to put you on the spot, but it doesn't sound like we're subsidizing them. We don't have clarity on whether it's their responsibility or not. Someone needs to say it's their responsibility, cut and dry, or say, no, we're subsidizing or whatever. I don't feel like I've gotten clarity. Does anyone else? Because I think it's been wishy-washy.
Well, it's clear, I don't think it's wishy-washy. It's clear that the sewer infrastructure in our streets is creating a problem. That we all see it. And that's why you have the problem with at the manhole covers, and it needs to get addressed one way or another. The sewer district's position is, well, it's your street, so you guys are responsible for the streets, so you should pay for it, right? So, which we have been doing, but we don't have the revenue to take care of the problem the way it should be, the way it should be taken care of. So the proposal is to levy a tax, which we can do, and we do it with all utilities. This is the only utility that's in the street that is not paying this tax. Everyone else pays it. Every other utility. This is the only one that doesn't do it. And the revenue that you're going to use is going to get obtained from this tax is going to be used to address a problem that is created by the existence of that sewer infrastructure in the street. So is that fair? I mean, that's everyone can make their own judgment about it, but there's certainly an argument that it is fair, it's reasonable, and they're brought in to doing what every other utility that's operating in this city is doing, because the utility tax we collect from these other utilities, we then can use to address the problems that those utilities create.
Well, and Marks, I'd say we are subsidizing when we do a road pavement project and we've got to raise iron and we've got to make that as part of the project. The city's paying for that, right? And that should be coming from the sewer district. That's their issue.
So why aren't we making them do that? Is we
I-
control the roads, why don't we
can't.
make them? do
Well,
that?
I think this tax is that tool to do that.
So
I was just going to say, again, I think it was October. I don't think it's a priority for them. even if it is their obligation.
I agree with you.
And so how do you, what, do you enter another lawsuit or something of that sort? It just seems like we never get to a point of finality. And so as the mayor said, I think this is a tool to,
This is how we make.
eventually we're going to
Right.
absorb the sewer district at some point in time. And so, it's kind of either you pay for it now or you're going to pay for it
And
later.
that really doesn't change anything, whether
No, that's
sewer
true.
district is operating or eventually at some point in time, the city does assume and takes over all of the responsibilities. Those costs and expenses are still there and is built into the rate structure. The tax will remain. It won't change.
And Marcus,
We'll be operating the utility instead of the sewer district. That will change. But the revenue that's needed to cover the costs of having those structures in the city and in our streets doesn't change. That won't change. So.
Marcus, to your point, I mean, to summarize my understanding of everything we talked about is, maybe there is a legal mechanism we could look to try and make them do what they're supposed to. But as Greg said, it'd be a fight and it's not clear. This path is much more straightforward. The downside is they can then step back and say, we're only jacking up the rates because the city forced us to.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm just, if they don't think they're responsible for it and there's no mechanism whatsoever, then they just, like, again, we're subsidizing. But if there's no mechanism for us other than legally to do it, then this is the only appropriate way for us to handle it.
To that point, I had read that there's an opportunity for us to put information in the utility bill explaining what's happening. Do we have an opportunity to sort of counteract that message that?
I think that's our opportunity. They've offered it.
Okay.
So I like what we do with the Transportation Betterment District, and I really thought that that's part of what helped community members understand with the messaging. This is what we're currently doing. This is what we need to do. And then we have deliverables right there, and so that 60 manholes is only 1.6% of 37. I mean, that's not a big number. And so if you look at, maybe math's off. If you look at I would also like to see how much we're subsidizing. If you come up with a number and say, hey, we're subsidizing, is it 500,000? Is it 50,000? Whatever that number is, and go back a couple of years and saying, this is what these numbers are going towards, and say, wow, like the city spent $2 million. They could have built, 2 miles of sidewalks, to elementary schools instead of, doing this stuff for the sewer district. Something to that effect for me would just be helpful. And I think it may resonate with the community members, and some type of information like that to pass along in the messaging and the utility bills.
Mayor, it's 8:00, so we need a motion to extend. We also have a 15-minute executive session with potential action.
Okay.
Well, I just heard differently. So I'm just going to say potential at this
All
point until you guys can work it out.
Potential.
Potential.
Okay, so real quick, do we want to continue this discussion tonight? Do you want to table it and move to another night to think about your percentages that you're okay with? Where are you at on this discussion before we extend?
I do have a question that I'd like to ask.
Okay, so with that, I'd look for a motion to extend. How long are we going to need for the executive session?
15 minutes plus
Did you say 13?
15.
15?
So let
Figure
13.5.
Figure 20 minutes.
20, probably 20 if there's.
Half an hour.
So can I get a motion to extend the meeting by, let's say, 25 minutes?
Move to extend the meeting by 25 minutes.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We're extending.
I'd prefer to table this.
Really quick, my question, either Barb or Greg, as a step to kind of be transparent about what we're doing, can we restrict these funds that we'll be getting from this particular tax to the street fund so that citizens know where it's going, what it's going to be used for, and that this isn't just some kind of, eventual money grab?
This council can.
Okay.
We could do that. We could add a provision to the ordinance that
says this is what
dedicates the funds.
Kind of like we did with the TBD.
Just streets.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I
TBD
think-
is very much more specific. The garbage utility tax does go into street fund for street uses. It, like, as I said, we could put a restriction in the code for sewer. We'd have to work that out with Greg on just that proportion, but future councils could take that restriction off.
Understood, but
But the reality of it is they're unrestricted funds.
They are unrestricted.
That's the reality of it. We can restrict anything we want to.
yeah, well,
It's our budget.
I guess the way I look at it is I'm part of this council, my vote is on this council, and if I'm gonna consider a tax like this, I want to make sure the citizens know what's going, and if some future council wants to change that, that's on them.
Yeah, so one thing I would suggest that we think about in there is that the money would go towards streets and sewer development as part of that.
I, just one more thing. Thinking about the tiering, the tiered approach versus, levying the tax that we need. I just like us to consider, I feel like we've gotten ample, information from our own Public Works Department about the need. And I do sort of agree with Commissioner Kochi. I see how it could negatively impact our citizens if they're getting taxed next year and then getting taxed 2 years later, and how that sort of taxing fatigue, not tax, it's not a tax, it's a fee.
Fee fatigue.
I would propose that we decide what percentage we want and that we make that happen in one time. That's all.
One-time deal.
A one-time deal. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so we've got some good stuff to work on. We'll bring back some answers and let's bring this back in whenever we want to bring it back on the schedule. Go ahead.
I guess I just maybe would like some more clarity in the sense that I'd like to see an ordinance come back, a proposed ordinance.
The ordinance is in the packet.
There's a draft ordinance.
Right,
We
with the
can change it.
modifications though, that we come back with maybe a specific percentage, specific time frame to implement this.
Do we have
And
consensus?
specification as to what it's for. And bring that back for consideration rather than just another discussion.
Yep.
I'm supportive of that.
Do we have time to hammer out those details, though? I think.
Well, the mayor's
5%.
sewer for roads and sewer infrastructure. I mean, that's where the money's going. We need to figure out a percentage, is what we need to figure out, and if we're doing a tier or not. I mean, those are we've already got the one thing figured out.
And it's going to be 90 days. I mean,
And in the 90 days, I agree with
I think that makes
Commissioner Wright.
sense.
I think it's great to provide time for people to, I think it's great.
We have 60 days currently built into this draft ordinance, but if you want to do 90 days, we can do.
Yeah, we would recommend 90 days. We do need to notify the other utility providers as well, since we're changing the definition of gross income as well.
I guess the one thing is on the rate, rather than just kind of, a shot from the hip. I would like to see a more substantive estimate of total costs for all these things we've talked about, so that if anyone comes back and looks at this and says, why am I being passed on this tax of X%, we can say, because here's how much it costs, here's how much we needed to raise, and we have a justification for that.
We're gonna
I
run
guess
out
I-
of time if we keep debating.
Yeah.
I guess I feel like we have that in the final page of our packet with the combination of the pavement preservation, the manhole lid adjustments, the trench pavement issues, the capital construction. Like, to me, that justifies.
Okay, so let's do this. We'll fill out a little bit more of the proposed ordinance, and then if there's some more debate points, we can take that up at the next meeting.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Great. So we're gonna go ahead and move into a executive session with property acquisition as the topic, and we do or don't have.
I'm
Excellent.
getting conflicting, so I thought,
Well,
you're saying
that's,
Possible.
possible, potential.
Potential action.
So 15 minutes,
Okay.
property acquisition, RCW 4230. We'll be back at 8:25.
Okay.
All right.
8:20.
Just kidding, 8:22.
8:20, yeah.
8:22. We are? Hey, we're back on.
Okay, hey,
Angie, we're back on.
we are back, we are back live and no action to follow. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn. Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, go out and do good things.
Thank you.